Portal 2, the sequel to the 2007 first-person puzzle platformer Portal, is considered by some to be one of the best games of all time, as well as an improvement over its predecessor. Compared to Portal, Portal 2 added in a considerable amount of new content, as well as a more detailed story, and considerably more dialogue. However, did these improvements really enhance the series and make the series better, or are people just blowing smoke up this game's ass? Unlike the original Portal, where you're kinda just thrust right into the game with little to no background, Portal 2 opens with the main character Chell being awakened after some indiscriminate amount of time by Wheatley. He tries to help her escape by taking her through several test chambers until they find GLaDOS' lifeless corpse. Being the idiot that he is, Wheatley accidentally reactivates her. GLaDOS then puts Chell through more tests until Wheatley and Chell meet up again, and at this point they disarm the neurotoxin gas as well as fuck up the turret assembly line by changing the master copy to a defective one. Finally, they reach GLaDOS and perform a core transfer where Wheatley is inserted into GLaDOS' body and GLaDOS is inserted into a potato. Then just as you're about to leave, in a predictable turn of events, Wheatley ends up turning evil. Next, you're forced to wander through the facility where you meet GLaDOS, and then you wander around some more and do some more tests that Wheatley has designed / stolen from GLaDOS. This all culminates in a sort of boss battle with Wheatley where you end up replacing him with GLaDOS, and then you are let free. Now I guess my biggest problem with the story is how similar it is to the original. Both games start out very similarly, with Chell waking up in a room and then gaining access to a portal gun that only shoots blue portals, and later a portal gun that shoots both. Then there's the robot that you think is helping you that ends up betraying you. Next there's your escape from the facility, and finally there's the ending confrontation where you defeat the evil robot. It's just too similar and predictable in its execution. Not only that, but the twist where Wheatley ends up betraying you was completely predictable. Even the new story elements that give background information on Aperture weren't that interesting, seeing as how I really didn't care at all about finding more about the facility. I was more interested in the gameplay, but maybe that's just me. Most people who have a problem with Portal 2 say that it's too short. However, I actually felt that the game was too long. On average, the main story of Portal 2 was about 8 hours, whereas Portal's main story was about 3. My problem with how long the game was that sometimes the game just seemed to drag on and on, especially the parts where you were exploring the facility. The facility was just so open and bland looking, and pretty much just consisted of you looking for a surface where you could put a portal so you could progress. It just felt like you were doing the same shit in a different room after a while. And sure, Portal also had you explore the facility as well, but that was at the very end of the game, after you had spent all your time in the test chambers, whereas in Portal 2 there were several times where you went from the test chambers to the facility. Unlike Portal, Portal 2 added in a lot of different ideas and concepts for the test chambers, such as aerial faith plates, redirection cubes, tractor beams, light bridges, and different colored gels that do various things. Of course, the addition of new gameplay elements is always a positive as it keeps the game interesting. However, I felt as though a lot of these new features were just barely introduced, used in a few puzzles and quickly forgotten about. To me, it seemed like there weren't that many puzzles that used the new concepts to their full potential because of the fact that when these new ideas were introduced, the game gave players 1 to 2 rooms to figure out the basics, and then only 1 or 2 more complex puzzles before another new idea was introduced. It also didn't help that the game was structured in such a way that you spend an equal amount of time doing test chamber puzzles, as well as spending time going behind the scenes of the facility to get to the other testing chambers, seeing as how the behind the scenes puzzles didn't really include any of the new concepts. As for replayability, Portal 2 has diminishing returns after multiple playthroughs. The first time I played Portal 2, I had a good time and enjoyed going through and figuring out the puzzles. There were a few times where I felt that the game dragged on, but for the most part I enjoyed playing the game. The second time, however, I had considerably less fun. Even though I hadn't played the game since it came out, I remembered a lot of the solutions for the puzzles and was able to rush through the game. Considering that the best part of Portal is figuring out the puzzles, it's hard to enjoy going through the game when you can clear a room in about 30 seconds, and after a while the game is no longer fun. The same thing can be said about the original Portal, but unlike Portal 2, Portal actually has extra challenges like completing a room using the fewest number of portals, or steps, that kind of expand the replayability of the game. Of course, Portal 2 does have co-op gameplay, but that's if you can find a person to play with you. Speaking of co-op, I thought that Portal 2's co-op was more fun than the main game. What I liked about the co-op was that it was more focused on the test chambers, and in my opinion did a better job at integrating the new concepts. Not only that, but solving puzzles with a partner was a more fun experience overall. If Portal 2's main campaign had been like the co-op was, I feel like the game would have been much better, seeing as how I only really cared about doing puzzles and not about the story. Now everyone seems to rave about how funny and good the dialogue is in Portal 2, and although I did find some parts funny, I thought that some of the dialogue and jokes were a bit forced. For instance, in Portal, when GLaDOS spoke, the dialogue was quirkier, which made it funnier considering the situation. In Portal 2, most of the time you were just being insulted, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but they just kept going on, and after a while, it was kinda like, I get it, I'm a fat stupid bitch, could you maybe say something a little more creative? And again, once you play the game for a second time, the dialogue isn't as funny as it was the first time you heard it. Now probably one of the most annoying things in this game is Wheatley. His constant nonsensical ramblings are more annoying than funny, and I really don't understand why the hell everybody likes him so much. And yes, I get that he was intentionally written to be annoying and whatnot, but even still, the fact remains that I hated Wheatley. I just felt that he didn't really fit into the game. He seemed like more of a comic relief character, except there was no need for a comic relief character, considering the fact that there was no real tension, and the fact that every other piece of dialogue was supposed to be funny as well. So final verdict, is Portal 2 overrated? Yeah, I'd say it is. It's true that Portal 2 added in a lot more content and complexity as far as the puzzles go, compared to Portal. However, I felt that the game came up short with the story and the humor. I also wish the game was more puzzle focused, as I really didn't care to explore the facility, or about Aperture's background. That being said, I still think Portal 2 was a great game, but it just doesn't deserve all of the praise and hype it has received.